Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome back to Serving Up. I'm your host, Shaun Sullivan, and today I'm sitting down with one of the most recognisable figures in the world of squash, with WSO and PSA refereeing legend Roy Gingell. We go right back to the valleys and the unique madness of Maesteg Squash Club, and how a cricket-mad junior fell in love with squash, became club captain, coach, referee, and somehow ended up on this 45-year journey that took him across the world. We talk about his infamous Gingerelli nickname, the getting a huge call wrong on the world stage and being made on making national press and national radio. And we dig into the reality of modern refereeing, the travel, the pressure, the preparation, and making decisions under the fire. We also discuss what the WSO are trying to build, heading towards squash's big Olympic debut. And crucially, Roy shares some simple, practical advice for club players and grassroots referees who want to make matches fairer, safer, and more enjoyable. Before we get into it, as always, this episode is brought to you by our partners at Oliver Squash UK, the racket pioneer since 1938, and of course ACC Leisure, who have secured the future of leisure across all of the racket sports that we cover in the UK. Okay, let's get into it with Roy. Good morning, Roy. You well?
Good morning, Shaun. Nice to see you, mate, after a few years. Hope you're keeping well.
Yeah, a few years. Yeah, keeping very well. Yeah, last time I saw you in person would have been the Squash Wales dinner in 2023 when you were just moving over, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, those dinners are good events. You know, get everyone from the squash scene in Wales together in Cardiff. Good night, innit? Good night.
Very good night, and it's always great because obviously you get like Joel and Tesney coming in as well. It's I always love seeing when the under 13s are getting their caps and they're pointing at Joel and trying to go over and get a picture. It's
and then we go to the other stream and the Masters, the overs 55, 60, 65s, them. So it's a good night to get everyone where they present as many sort of trophies, recognize as many people as possible, few awards thrown in. So it's a really good sort of event in the calendar, late June, early July every year.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, because I know in our league, we got a member from our club who's now 79 going to get his cap. And then we've got a young lad who's only 12 going to get his cap. So, what's that, 67-year difference between them, but going for the same thing.
The boys from, like I said, there's a good, healthy sort of selection from North Wales and South Wales, isn't it? Like I said, I've known, obviously, Paul Barrell, Duncan, isn't it? And whatever, the guys... Yeah. The guys get in, all age groups, and then the youngsters is superb, man, to get everyone together on that one sort of night. People come down from, north, south, east, and west to Cardiff. Great.
Yeah, no, it is a very, very good night, in fairness. But now you talk about Squash Wales. We're going to talk about you, everything you've done from, starting, getting into squash, and the unique club that is Maesteg. I haven't played there a couple of times. And then obviously you now with WSO really pushing forward with helping making squash easier, and the game is more fluid as well. But I'm going to go right back to the start and talk about Maesteg. Do you want to describe Maesteg for anybody who doesn't know what Maesteg is like?
Maesteg, one road in, one road out. So many people, Shaun.
If you make it out.
Yeah, if you make it out, in between Cardiff and Swansea, up in the valleys there, population 25,000 people, perhaps better well known for its rugby union, some massive stars that have played for like the British Lions from there, But Maesteg Squash Club kicked off April 1979. I was really lucky. My sister and a partner at the time, him and his couple of uncles actually owned like a country club called the Glanllinvi, and then built basically 4 squash courts on the side. April 79, and that's where it evolved. 4 squash courts. April, I started playing in the August, and my background was cricket. Played cricket to a really, really good standard. So just, she said, come up to the squash club, have a game of squash. Initially, when they were building it, there were no doors on. So we went there, and my sort of brother-in-law, as I called him, Glyn, he had the books out, and we went on court, started hitting the ball, and I thought, right, but then I had to play a bit of cricket, and I started playing a bit more serious in the August, and that's basically, as you know, it's a bit of a bug, isn't it? You get into it. I ended up playing like 8 days a week, flute my A levels, didn't go to university because I was blimmin' on a squash court for hours and hours a day, and we had a couple of teams. Started then in the county leagues, Mid Glamorgan, as we well known, and in the bottom league, finished bottom in the first league, first year, Division 3 we were in, and then we started obviously learning to play the game, and the guys, a group of us, started to get quite good at it, and slowly but surely we started to make our way through the leagues, but because of the family connection, I ended up going club captain. And as club captain, you've got to blimmin' referee the blimmin' matches, haven't you? So I've got into refereeing. I took a course then in 1980, got qualified as a referee in 1980 when I think of it. I'm in my 45th year now as a qualified referee. I actually done my coaching exams as well. So 1980-81, I was a qualified referee. I was qualified coach. I was taking, the weekend coaching of the kids. Got some really, really good kids playing, some Welsh internationals, Gavin Jones, who got to sort of mid-30s in the world. He's from my club. Started him off playing, and we just went up through the leagues there, got to Mid Glamorgan and the South Wales leagues. And that's basically the sort of journey. 600 members first couple of years, went down to 454 course. So you can imagine, in those early 80s, it was tough to get a sort of court. They sold the club then, and it became a members club. So from mid sort of 83, 84, it became a members club. So the members to this day have run that club. We had a grant from the Sports Council of Wales to transfer all the details across. And we just went from there, really. And that's basically where my refereeing sort of started. You obviously played some characters from there. I don't know if we should name and shame some.
I think it's a law, isn't it, to play for Maesteg? You can't be boring. If you're vanilla, you're not allowed to play.
Yeah, so you can imagine from a refereeing point of view, the language of some of the players and the rules, isn't it, is law unto themselves, isn't it? So I could tell a good few stories, not on air, unfortunately, with some of the characters. I'll name a few: Jane Williams and Jane Oddy, she got married, and Phil Morgan, and then we had Mike Curlin, Stephen Curlin, couple of the and a couple of the younger guys. They are like folklore in Maesteg Squash Club. So I was there. I was lucky. I was club champion actually for 10 years, and typical Maesteg. Do you know when we used to play our club championship?
Friday night
on Boxing Day. The final. The final on Boxing Day morning, right? And do you know why? It's quite simply because in those days, in the 80s and 90s, we used to play the quarter-final a couple of days before Christmas, the semi-final like day before Christmas Eve, and of the final then, everyone used to play in it. Final Boxing Day, men's, women's, juniors, over 35s. So if you were 36, 37, and in the final of the club championship, you had to play the two matches in the morning. But Maesteg, and what happened on Maesteg and Boxing Day, Maesteg played Bridgend in rugby. So our day was set out, Shaun. It was the final sort of 11 o'clock. Final started 9 o'clock. After the final, couple of beers, and then 3 o'clock kickoff, either 8 miles down the road to Bridgend or just walk up to Maesteg and Bridgend, and then after that get back into the house, little shower, we used to have our dinner and dance and the presentation evening in Maesteg Town Hall after those final. So Boxing Day was a full day out. You can imagine the state of everyone. Well, not at midnight, at blimmin' 8 o'clock in the night, right?
Yeah.
So that was like historic sort of day out, for years and years. So I was lucky a couple of Christmases, Christmas Day. I had the keys to the club, so I could go and have a practice Christmas Day actually before my the club used to open lunchtime, so I used to go an hour before in the morning if I was in any form of state, just to have a little knock. But I was under the weather many Christmas days as well, after Christmas Eve and whatever, but typical, club championship finals, Boxing Day.
Yeah, I imagine it probably didn't help that, because Maesteg is like a proper club in terms of like you had the pub connected to the courts.
Yeah.
So like I always remember showing up. It was one of the Six Nations where we first started playing. Wales first started playing France on a Friday.
Yeah. Oh.
And I remember us showing up and them going, right lads, we're going to give you a walkover because we want to watch the rugby. You're more than welcome to play a couple of games and then join us for food. And we were just like, yeah. So we literally just played games for about an hour until kickoff. And then we were just sat there with the burgers and onion rings and all sorts of watch. But it was just the Maesteg guys, because they closed it for the match. It was
And in the end, see, that's what happened. We used to play the matches on a Friday night because, that's when people and the crowd, obviously the boys used to come in from the bar, and I mean, the heckling, Shaun, isn't it? It was like,
yeah.
So that stood me in good stead, actually, looking back, that was a good grounding for my sort of refereeing, And my playing was going well. I was, a half decent player. I played county squash, whatever. And that's where I started to enter some tournaments. And I started to sort of referee then. And because we had a good team, when we went into the South Wales League, we had a couple of local businesses. We used to pay a few players then to play number 1 or number 2 for us, so enabled us to drop down a little bit. And that's basically how I got into a bit more serious sort of refereeing. The 80s, the mid 80s, the late 80s. I started going to these Welsh tournaments then, and it was really good because, I don't think it happened now, but a couple of the players said, Roy, come and referee our match. Roy, which was really good at the time. And so I started to earn a little bit of respect at the local level, isn't it? So that's basically how I got into it. And
So what hooked you on it though? Because obviously there's a lot of people who hate refereeing. Obviously you're not one of them. What hooked you onto it?
Well, it's just about staying involved in the game, and I was a little bit of a student of the game. I done a bit of coaching. I like coaching, so I liked a bit the movement and whatever, and I just sort of got into it really, and but it was ingrained because I was the captain, and that's basically what hooked it by default really. I ended up refereeing, it's like 2 courts. I ended up refereeing the 2 matches on my court and then going on to play at the end because no one would do it. And I was even refereeing when I was away from home as well, because in those days we used to have a point, didn't we, for being a qualified referee.
Yeah, you still do.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a good sort of thing that hooked us on. But that's how I really got into it. And then, year in, year out, even on the weekend, all these tournaments, I used to go to all the events in Squash Wales, doing the juniors, the under 11s, all the way through to the Masters events. And I still do all right. The last couple of years been really difficult because I've actually been away from home, on the times that Squash Wales have had their events. So I haven't really done many, which I'm I'm still definitely, if I'm free, going to go and do some more Squash Wales events really. I haven't closed that book, no way, because I done it for 40 years, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you used to as well do the odd do you remember doing the odd sneaky assessment without telling anybody?
Oh yeah.
Me being one of them. I just remember, I think I refed 3 matches on the trot, and I went to go, and you were like, whoa, I'm not finished yet. was like, what do you mean you're not finished? You were like, well, you've only had like 5 decisions. How am I supposed to know if you're any good or 5 decisions?
Yeah.
Do the next one.
Yeah, that's right, and we got into it and just try to pass the knowledge on to everyone, exactly. Even in those days, just exactly the same sort of principles as we do now. So, Maesteg got a lot to answer for, haven't
they do, yeah. I also remember the match. Do you remember the match, the person you assessed after you assessed me?
No, not really, no.
It was one match, best of 5. They had 126 decisions in their 5 games.
Yeah.
I just remember you coming off just being like drained from assessing. So, 126 decisions in, in 5 sets is just crazy.
And just bear that sort of stat in mind, Shaun, because when we talk a little bit later about where we are now, I mean, 120 or there was a British Open final with 120 decisions. Back in the day, back in the 80s, a British Jahangir and Jansha, whatever, 120 odd decisions.
Yeah.
I mean,
with that though, could you argue, because that would have been up to 9, wouldn't it? Would that have been up to 9 English scoring?
Yeah, up to 9. Yeah.
So would it be more points, wouldn't it?
Well, potentially, but even so,
even so, it's crazy.
Imagine all the stoppages on where we want to go now today, 2025, isn't it? And that's work in progress now. We moan we get 30, 40 decisions now, too many. So it's interesting how the game is evolving, isn't it?
Yeah, and I always remember because I watched that and I asked you, what would you have done differently? And I remember you saying it was drawing a line.
Yeah.
There was just a couple of, like, he'd given a left when really, like, there was no effort made. And I just remember you saying, like, if he had just committed to one side, that would have cut off so many decisions of players going. So I remember someone just like standing, like, no, not even moving, just go, please. And they'd get a let. And just that drawing the line of at least show me an effort. And vice versa, move out the way, or it's going to be a stroke. But
quite simple, really, quite simply, and that's what happens today. 2 players on the ball. You've got to try and keep it simple, but it's very subjective, isn't it?
Exceptionally subjective. So when did you start transitioning to more full-time referee? Because I've always known you as Roy the referee.
So perhaps that was in the early 90s, where again I was really lucky because I only lived 5 minutes from the club in Maesteg, and then we had this Super League in the club, right? 3 players on a Monday night, so all the best players in the world for 5 games sort of came to Maesteg during that sort of season, and I started to referee those sort of matches. And my good friend at the time, who was an international referee called Peter Lawrence from Pembroke, he used to come up. So me and him used to referee those matches. And the guys, who I worked with for a number of years, who I'm really, really good friends with now, David Evans, he was going, Roy, you should, these guys, you're as good as these guys. You just need to get more and more experience. So that's basically where I sort of got into it in the mid sort of 90s. And then I started going to some England events and some England tournaments. And I ended up refereeing in the British Open a few times. That was in Cardiff, the Leaks Classic as well. The Leaks British Open in the mid sort of 90s, early 90s as well. And I started doing those. And that's where I started, I was lucky, I started taking a bit more serious. And I got invited then via Squash Wales to the European Championships in sort of 97, 98. And that's the sort of main journey where then I had then at the time sort of assessments from the assessors that were those sort of events. And that's really where it sort of took off, for me during that mid 90s, where I was a little bit more sort of serious, had done some really good matches, done some high profile matches, messed a few matches up. There's one match which the commentator PJ, Paul Johnson, I done Nicol and Johnson 1997 British Open, where I cost him the match in the first round.
Interestingly enough, I saw Jason Foster at the British Juniors, and I told him, I said, "Oh, I'm interviewing Roy," and that was the first thing that popped to his head. He said that there was a Five Live did a 10 worst refereeing decisions, and there was 9 football, and then your decision on PJ just snuck on in there.
Yeah. So that was a really interesting sort of time, you know. Obviously, I was the referee. There was a marker, there was a ball, a pickup, you know, or match ball, which I'm going not up. Massive crowd in Cardiff on those 2 courts, you know. First round, PJ had match ball. Obviously, I would have dealt with it differently. Now, they even sort of, the crowd were going berserk, and I had called sort of not up. The marker had said nothing. I've got the videos, really, really close ball, really close. Was it good? Was it not upright? It's a close one. Knowing what I would know now, I wouldn't have said anything. They were shaking hands and walking off, and I'm going, no. I had coaches in my face, literally in my face. I won't mention his name, but he was Peter Nicholls' coach at the time, saying, you called it. Went back on court. PJ did have further match balls, but didn't convert, but he just remembers that one, you know. And actually, then a couple of years later, one of the Radio 5 guys at the time was Adrian Childs, and they had a program on the top 10 worst refereeing decisions. So I'm going, what's going? I honestly thought it was a wind up, but someone had written in, and there was a program on a Saturday morning, and they had me on, and apparently PJ, but PJ refused to go on it. And there was 10 referee calls, 9 football calls, and me from squash. And if you think today now, all the dodgy squash calls we make, I mean, and all, you know, all these other sort of sports as well, it was a wind up. I'm positive, even to today, it was a wind up. But Adrian Childs rang me up, and I was talking, whatever. So you know, there was the Maradona one, isn't it, with the hand?
Yeah, the hand of God. Yeah.
So that was in front of me. Thankfully, I come in at number 4, I think. You know,
God.
Top 10, and I'm going, you know, and
top 5. Don't sell yourself short.
Yeah, but oh my word, you know. So anyway, but poor old PJ, we didn't talk for a number of years until him and David Evans were at a European Championship, and they had a few beers, and Dave said, called me across, and so he kissed and made up then. And like I said, you know, I'm good friends with PJ now, and he talks about it, and you know, and he still doesn't know the rules, Shaun. You know, that's work in progress. There was a rumor going around he was going to become a referee, but I think he's seen how difficult it is. So you know, yeah, so that's one of the matches that I've cost a player. You know, first round British Open, Peter Nicholls got to the final, lost to Jansha in the final that year. Yeah. So, but you learn, you know, in all due respect, I learned so much from that match. You know, it was a rude awakening. You know, obviously didn't referee again in the tournament. Marked a couple of games because they had a mark and referee. I was taken off refereeing, and one of the writers at the time, which was good, there was a bit of an article in the Times from that match, and it had referee Ray Gingerelli. So my brother rings me up and he says, "What have you been doing now?" I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "He was this Italian referee that we had, that a surname like us, Ray Gingerelli." And that's what David Evans calls me all the time, Gingerelli all the time now. The referee on the telly. So
the referee on the telly.
Gingerelli, yeah. So true story. Yeah.
So when after that did the PSA start getting you more involved? And because like I always remember, I did start playing to like 2000, right at the end of 2005. But I always knew you like going out to the PSA events. When did they start asking you to get more involved? Yeah, so basically I got onto the World Squash list in 2000. And at the time we had 2 categories, international category and a world category. And I got onto the international category in 2000. So then I started traveling around the world. We're invited, we're allocated
to basically all the PSA events and all sort of world squash events at the time. So every sort of PSA event, major event, they would ask for referees, and we would get allocated. So we ended up doing 4 or 5 sort of events of that a year, and some sort of assessments at the time. And then I was up for renomination then in 2003. And actually, I was really lucky. I skipped from being an international referee to a world referee on my first sort of renomination. And then there were only sort of 5 or 6 of us world referees from 2003. And that's really when, you know, when the journey was sort of underpinned, and we were nominated every sort of 3 years. And that's when I was on the sort of world stage from 2000. So used to do PSA events and world squash events, you know, from 2000. So I'm lucky I've been on that list sort of since 2000 for 25 years, really.
So what was, obviously now you're full-time dedicated to the job, but before then you had a job you had to do as well.
Yeah.
What was it like traveling to do for the tournaments? I'm sure you must have had some luggage going lost, or some sort of stories.
Yeah, lost my luggage. I'd had a few sort of stories which I got to be careful of. Got the old tummy, the deli belly, as we call it, you know, in a tournament which is well documented in Egypt at a Sky event, just late 2000s, where I failed to make the bathroom. That's probably the edited version of the story, Shaun, you know. So yeah, well documented, was in a little bit of a state, to be honest, refereeing the matches, failed to make the bathroom, failed to complete the matches for that particular day, you know, because something happened. So yeah, got a couple of stories all linked to them, you know, and some other sort of great events we went to as well.
What was the biggest challenges for you at that time then, when you were working and refereeing? And
yeah, I had to basically had a day job, so basically I had to take holidays, you know, so I never had sort of a holiday. Well, very rarely. I used to use all my holidays up for refereeing squash at the 4 or 5 events, 4 or 5 weeks holiday. That's where I used to get, you know. I'd some loo time from my work. I worked for a local authority in the sports department, so I was like leisure management. So I was lucky my bosses, you know, and I worked in Bridgend Borough Council. They gave me a little bit of a time off here and there. I had unpaid leave, you know. I took unpaid leave. And were we getting paid to referee? The best way I can describe it, we're just getting paid expenses, Shaun. You know, there wasn't sort of semi-professional. There certainly wasn't enough money there to leave, you know, even if we wanted to leave our day job to go refereeing. And this was 2000, 2010, all the way up to, you know, just a couple of years ago, to be honest.
Yeah. I imagine though, obviously, squash being, you know, your big passion and traveling the world. I mean, you were probably just thinking that was great.
Yeah. Well, get out of Maesteg, isn't it? You know,
yeah,
you know?
Free tickets.
Yeah, getting out, going around the world to see, you know, some places. Stayed on a couple of days after some of the events. Traveled back, you know. Lucky to referee in some iconic venues, you know, on the best seat in the house as well. Some ridiculous players, you know. Some of the matches, you know, my portfolio of matches, you know, I've been, you know, 6 Commonwealth Games I've been to, you know, ridiculous. So many, you know, 20 plus pro sort of world championships, and then British Opens, and many world squash and PSA events. Very, very fortunate, you know, over the last sort of 25 years.
Do you have a favorite venue?
Oh, I've had, there's been some real nice sort of venues. You know, the Swedish Open was really good, well looked after, a bit of snow, the camaraderie there, the atmosphere. You know, that's a sort of nice, intimate, you know, event, which hopefully is coming back on the calendar. You know, Freddie Johnson run that event, the K Swedish Open. People like Stefan Edberg used to be there playing as well and watching. You know, really well treated there, you know, and then all, you know, the pyramids in Egypt, Hong Kong, sort of Kowloon Island, you know, and lots of these sort of shopping malls and little theaters, which in their own right had something sort of special, you know. So many sort of good events there, you know. Obviously POC and Grand Central again,
Yeah.
you know, iconic sort of iconic venues where very privileged to have had the best seat in the house, you know, and hopefully not messing too many matches up.
Yeah, I think that's the best. I remember I went to the TOC when Rosner won, and I spoke to him about it a few weeks ago. But I remember walking into the Grand Central Station at those massive banners in the main hall of like Farag's. I think Farag had won it the year before, and you know, obviously his wife Noel Tayeb and Shabini, and it was just great seeing these massive banners with, I mean, God knows how many hundreds of thousands of people saw them over those few days.
I was watching by the front wall, you know, and all these people are fiddling back and forth like in it, and I'm there just watching a squash. And this couple, you know, in their 20s came. They obviously stopped off and they were going, "Gee, what's this?" You know, and I was there thinking, I don't know, he said. I think they call it cricket. You know, and I was just chuckling to myself, and well, you can't write it. Brilliant, isn't it? What an experience all these people, like, you know, it's typical American.
Yeah. I watched from the front wall as well, so I didn't fully realize it was. I thought we were just missing it, but we landed in on the semi-final day, and then we had a full day on the final day. So it was like, we're going to get there like an hour early because I knew it was only the front wall, so I managed to get at the front. Yeah. But yeah, it's just so phenomenal, you know, where they put it. And even like, because I lie, we actually, the last time I saw you was the British Open this year.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But that pink court in the rep theatre, I mean, there's not a bad seat there.
Yeah, and this Z court, they called it, where they had a couple of the World Series finals, you know, in London, you know, and when 1 year it blew off, you couldn't have the final, you know, but the dark court with the pink lines, that's the best court for me, you know, you can clearly see the ball, clearly see the lines as well, like, you know, to try to make our job as easy as possible. You know, but some of these glass courts then outdoors, you know, in places like Kuwait, a place called Green Island, where it's like an amphitheater, you know, which led to the, you know, they have a couple of Kuwait Opens, which led then to the World sort of Championship. And the setting, you know, where the weather's okay and everything like that. I mean, iconic, you know. That's the beauty of squash with this glass court. You can basically put it anywhere, can't you?
Yeah, it's have you got enough space? Job done.
Yeah, you know, even in hell outdoors on the football field, you know, and the conditions. Well, I think we there's a photograph of us, you know, and I think it was like 8 degrees or something like that. You know, the poor players, well, some of the players just couldn't and didn't play, you know, to be honest. But the conditions were very tasking for the you know, for the players, you know, if impossible, to be honest, on occasions. But they tried it outdoors, but you know, they went actually back indoors, because even May, you know, April, May in England is it's a bit fresh.
Yes, it's certainly not guaranteed to be in even the 20s, you know. It's you know, if you get 15, you're like happy days.
Exactly.
I remember it being at it was at the Hull Football Club, wasn't it, for a few years, wasn't it? For a few years it was there on the pitch. Because I knew a few members from our club would go up there, and you know, same as the rep theatre, there's no bad seat in the house because you're all just facing the back wall.
Yeah, and they had there's a couple of photographs going around where the sun, you know, bouncing off the glass, and that's all you could see was like, you know, 300 people watching when we're trying to referee in it. Is it nigh on impossible? It's amazing photographs.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, as you've already mentioned, you've ref, you know, extremely high profile games, high pressure games.
Yeah.
Have you got any sort of like tips, or how do you deal with the, you know, when it's getting like Shabaghi and Ashua, when it was 3-2 in the final, like 11-9, and you know, there's so many of the other matches you've done that have been so high pressure, and especially like Egypt, where you then got the crowd getting involved. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, you gotta you gotta try and go in prepared, and today's referee, it is like a professional sort of referee, and we gotta try and act and deliver a professional sort of performance. So it's tough, so different sort of coping strategies you gotta have. You've got to do your preparation, and you've got to try and get things in your mind so you're able to switch on and switch off under these pressure sort of situations. And it's really, really difficult, and that is sort of work in progress for all of us.
So what's your preparation as a ref? I imagine most people just think you rock up with the score sheet like you would at a league match and yes, spin up,
Yeah, so I'm like, I'm watching matches from my previous event. I'm watching matches of players potentially obviously then linked to the current sort of rules directive, talking to people within the game, my sort of critical friends that I use, within the game and outside the game. They give me tips on my sort of how I present myself, my wording, the identification of different sort of situations, how I manage that process, how basically my conscious and my unconscious sort of bias works as well. So behind the scenes, we drilling into the preparation before, during, after the match. So I've got various routines, which for every match and any match I do beforehand, an hour before, 20 minutes before, half hour ago, I've got sort of like these little ticks which work for me, so that I can sort of control the controllables, So I sit in the seat, I've got my scorecard, I've got a couple of pens, I've got this, I got that. I go through this routine, I got a bottle of water, so that I'm prepared, so that everything within my control, I am in a good place for. Because soon as they start playing, you'd be really surprised what can happen and come from sort of left field, which hopefully I have seen before, 25 years of refereeing, but I can guarantee you now and again, it doesn't happen. And even today, when we referee, some of the things which are given just don't happen. So for instance, communication between the match ref and the video ref, that's not always as good as it should be, as it was last week, which is different. Some of the microphones, different microphones. So the standards, so the tools that we use, they're not always consistent everywhere we go. So it's all these things from left field are coming. So if we are not prepared, the iPad, some basic things that hasn't been programmed correctly. So there's lots of things behind the scenes which potentially, even in 2025, are not quite right. And yet when we sit in the seat, the member of the public watching expects us to deliver everything the same as last week, the same as the last event. And I can guarantee you, behind the scenes, that is sort of work in progress. We're still not 100% there, for what we had. I'll give you an example from last week, China Open, massive stadium. The presentations was great, but going back the round earlier, the courts that they played on for the second round, they were sealed courts. So the players were slipping all over the place. And who do they take it out on? The referee. We haven't made a decision yet. So the atmosphere straight away, the tension had risen a couple of notches before we made a decision, because we couldn't see the sweat on the courts, and safety is paramount.
Yeah.
We go to referee, and the event, a gold event, is run by a local broadcaster. No reviews on the pickups.
Right.
So it's not a level playing field. So there's all these sort of things that we've got to cope with. So it's about trying to control the controllables that you have within your toolkit, because things are going to come from left field, and then you just hope then all these little anomalies that happen, they're there in the back of your mind. And for me, 25 years, hopefully I can pull it out to say, yeah, that's the decision, and the default thing, Shaun, is for any ref, whatever level, what's fair, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's a fair outcome? And if you've never seen it before, if you can quickly think, well, what's a fair outcome, and make the decision, you won't be far wrong.
Yeah, because I always remember the happened a couple of years ago, Amanda Sobey v Noor Al Tayeb, and she hit the back nick and it got stuck.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the decision was. I think it was a let.
Yeah.
Because it was a simple case of, well, she can't hit it. And then I think in the next round, it was a Sal versus Shabagi. They hit the nick, but it came out.
Yeah.
And it was the case of, well, it's hittable because it's come out.
Yeah.
But it's,
and there's all these little anomalies that people, and they all go to the ref and you expect you to know the answers. And I tell you, it's no single ref will know everything. And no. we've got to just quietly think, what's a fair outcome here? And hopefully the players will respect, that decision and that sort of explanation, the rationale behind it then. And they will play on. But in today's game, just like, forever really, the players, the players are in their groove as well, and you've got to try to respect that as well. But it's that balance, isn't it, between entertainment and then going over the mark, where then we start going into sort of dissent and code of conduct things. So that's we want to try and keep the play flowing all the time.
I think all referees, like even the amateur ones, try to not do code of conduct until it is absolutely necessary. And I go on to you saying about like the refs not knowing everything. There's a famous video. Do you know the referee Luke Pierce, English referee? Does all the international matches, but there's a video of him in the ref in a Premiership match. They go to the TMO and he goes, this is the outcome. It's a penalty to, can't remember the other team, so we'll say the red team. Then somebody from the blue team goes, oh, but what about this rule? It should be our penalty. Explains the rule and he goes, yeah, you're right, and then changes it. It's not just squash, it's every sport.
Correct. And that's another sort of tool that we've got to do, gather as much information as we can before we make a decision, and we've got to make a decision like that, haven't we? It's so subjective in the first place. Got to make the decision. What's fair? Obviously, safety is the other sort of main factor, and then there's this respect then between the player and the referee, which definitely is higher up on the agenda in 2025-24 than it was sort of in 2000 as well. That's been sort of written into the rules as well now, this respect angle as well, to try to show the public that there is this mutual sort of responsibility by everyone to keep the game flowing, more so for the unobserved eye as well, because the unobserved eye just doesn't want to see the players and the referees, going back and forth, and they want to see people hitting the ball, don't they?
Yeah, I think that's squash's biggest challenge when it comes to like all the racket sports, is the referee is actively involved. In tennis, you're just doing out calls, really, a couple of maybe odd anomalies, but you're so involved with squash. If the untrained eye doesn't know, I think that's our biggest sort of hurdle to get over.
And that's, this sort of 2028 goal, that's the responsibility of all of us, and it's not just the referee. So it is like the player and the administrators involved in the game. We've got this sort of get this sport, the matches flowing, to help improve the image and the watchability of this sort of sport, which is exciting, sort of dynamic, isn't it? And it's you know, very, very demanding on the players. It's not just the referees. And to be honest, that, you know, it's an interesting debate, this, because we here, we are facilitating the rules, and in effect, and this is obviously my sort of opinion as well, but don't shoot the messengers, so to speak. We are the messengers from, like, WSO, refereeing these matches on the circuit, and we are delivering the message, the directives, you know, that are frankly made up by the administrators, with the referees involved as well, right? But it's not just us on our own. It's the players, the coaches, the administrators, you know, the governing bodies, so to speak, of the sport. We've got to get people watching our sport. And obviously the showcase of the Olympics, that's the big challenge. And it's all our responsibility, Shaun. You know,
Yeah.
if they think it's only the referees, then more fool them, because we can only do so much. If the players don't take ownership, if the administrators don't play ownership, then this will be a one and only sort of Olympics, won't it? You know,
Yeah.
and this is the work in progress behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, you do get a lot of players trying to get involved. Like Timmy Brownell's obviously set up the squash league over in the US, which seems to be doing extremely well. But he's also come up with a totally different way of refereeing. So I'm not sure if have you heard his suggestion.
I haven't, no.
So his suggestion is the player asks for what they want. So if they ask for a let, the referee has only got to decide, is there a let or no let? If they ask for a stroke, it's a stroke, or essentially no let, nothing.
Yeah, interesting, different forms, you know, and, you know, I like these sort of little quirks, whatever, within the standard rules that people, you know, I'm all for innovation and trying sort of something new, you know. I've had to think about this, you know, and that's a really interesting, I'll have a chat to Timmy when I see him, interesting sort of dynamic to see how it all sort of pans out, because I've been a little bit more of a firmer sort of advocate, where we don't have any lets, to be honest. You know, we have an outcome to each and every rally, but there's a lot of work to be done there, because on this sort of movement of the players to get the ball, to clear the ball, that's a concern at the moment, where there's a necessary and natural sort of movement. But we get these, you know, 95% of the players, you know, they want to genuinely go and hit the ball. They genuinely try to clear the ball. And so, some of these matches that we have, you know, we don't need a blimmin' ref, you know, and then we get the odd player where their movement genuinely is clumsy, genuinely, you know, they're struggling to get out on. I get that. But then we get some of the players where, you know, they're creating, you know, this word unnatural, unnecessary. So all of a sudden, these words now are in directives, are in rules, because of these players that potentially are not playing fair, you know, are brought into the game, and we've got to deal with them. And we got to have these sort of players, you know, the McEnroes of tennis, you know, we've got to have these characters. I don't dispute that. We always have that in squash. But if players are you know, and my opinion is, you know, we are there to administer the rules, and if these players are flaunting those rules, then the administrators need to deal with these players, just like they do in other sports. The referees administer the rules, and when they flaunt those rules, the administrators deal with the sanctions, be it a red card, TMO, 5-minute sin bin, banning, whatever that means. You know, we deal with these characters, you know, appropriately, you know, and where possible, you know, and they get sanctioned, whatever those sanctions, you know, are deemed appropriate. Like, but it's interesting, but it's getting those games, that our sport, getting people hitting the ball, isn't it? And
Yeah.
watching some, because when we see a match like that, you know, everyone is going, oh my word, you know, and that's the best accolade for the referee. Who refereed that match?
Yeah.
Isn't it? That's the best accolade a referee can have. Do you see that match? Yeah. Who ref? Oh, I ref that match. Did you? Did you? That's the best. That's the best praise, you know, we can have as a referee, can we?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We'll move on to the you change into the WSO. I do want to. You mentioned about like players taking accountability, and I didn't used to like watching him play. I didn't like watching Zachariah play, but in fairness to him, when he lost to Jonah Bryant in that very messy match,
Yeah,
he came out, said he was disappointed in himself and he was going to change X, Y, and Z. And in fairness to him, the next match he played, it was like watching a different person. And it's somebody who's, what is he, 17 or 18?
yeah, and he's
you know,
definitely the focal point, you know, of you know, squash for the next sort of 10, 15 years potentially. So if he can do it, then anyone can do it. And let's see what happens, you know. And it's good. It's work in progress. He recognizes, you know, some of his movement was unnecessary and natural. Then hopefully then he can claim his act up as other players can. And then we have this flowing game, isn't it? Which we all strive for, because we do want to see these matches where there's movement and the referee is involved, you know, with one player or with two players. We want the referee to call the score, don't we?
Yeah, I think not just with you saying about the referee who ref that game. I quite like it when they go, who ref that game, because I forgot who it was, because there was like 3 decisions, or when it was simply like, you know, they asked for a let, the referee said, look, it's no let, drew the line, and then from there on the player just play.
Yeah.
You know, I like those matches where it is just not that you're praising the ref for getting the decisions right, you're praising the ref for not being
involved,
not becoming involved.
Correct.
And in fairness to, because I do want to give him his flowers, especially considering he is only 17, 18 to mature. In fairness to Zachariah, I do think that's very, very commendable of him. And hopefully we'll get more of that from, you know, everything moving forward. And
and in these matches where the both players are playing the game, you know, there was a match that I done last week in China, you know, the final, both players really fair, and there were some real tough decisions to make there. Did I get everyone right? No, I didn't, you know, and I'd be a fool to recognize, I think that I was like 100% there, but I reflect on that match, what I done well, what I didn't do well, try to pick some learning from my critical friends, what I can do better next time, what worked well, what didn't sort of work well as well. But that match was all about the players, you know, and it went to, I don't know, 14-12 in the 5th, whatever. And it was what a game to watch, you know, where I was involved a little bit, but the decision making, they took that out of my remit. So it was about themselves, which I 150% applaud them for doing.
Yes.
And hopefully then on some of the tough calls, you know, like I said, we got right. And just due to the nature of the game, some of those decisions resulted in a no let, a let, and a stroke. So there was, you know, tough points for both players, you know, and tough situations for all 3 of us, to be fair. But we want a fair result, you know, but the matches, you know, are remembered for the play. And you know, let's not get sort of, you know, wound up there. This is only a small percentage of these matches, right, that get that way. And we're all on the learning curve. We're all on the responsibility curve, especially with us now being professional, right? So last week, I'm coming back, I'm watching those matches, I get feedback, I'm analysing, I'm making notes on my performance, what I can do better, what I can't do, learning, trying to get some tips from different people from within the game and outside the game on how I present myself and actually how I get to the decision, and what's affecting me, movement off the ball, to the ball, where is the ball, trying to keep it simple, and then the explanations, isn't it? To try to get the public to understand what is happening now, and these things are being driven by the administrators of the game, in conjunction with the referees, in conjunction with players, coaches, or whatever. So it's not you referees, it's a team effort here that we are trying to get this game in line for 2028, really.
I suppose that was probably the whole goal of when the WSO was properly formed and you got the professional referees. You were obviously working basically as the head of Squash Wales for a little bit before the WSO. It was you and Andrea that started at the same time, wasn't it? As professionals. So how did you get through that transition, and do you want to talk a bit more about your role there as well?
Yeah, so I'm like, obviously myself and Anne. So my title is professional referee and head of sort of development. So it is about, this journey of developing referees from around the world. So myself and Andrea come on board the first year, then Jason come on board. So there's 3 sort of full-time professional referees. And this season, now at the start of this season, 2 other referees have been contracted to a minimum of X amount of events. So in effect, they are like semi sort of pro as well. A guy called Roman Svek from Czechia and Daniel Greco was from Venezuela, who's based out of Mexico, and he referees a lot within the US system. So actually now there's 5 of us that are basically contracted to do all these sort of copper, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond events. So we go, up to sort of 15, 16 events. So that's just my sort of day job. I go to these events, 15, 16 events a year. When I come back, then I've got certain sort of topics and strands that I'm in charge of, that Andrea's in charge of, that Jason's in charge of, all linked to grow this sort of WSO brand. And just to be clear, what is sort of WSO? WSO is a partnership between PSA and World Squash, right? And we are here now to grow all aspects of the refereeing. And yes, we the transition from a World Squash referee to a WSO referee, those are sort of the transitions that we've encountered over the last sort of couple of years now, and we're busy sort of leveling off and appraising all these sort of referees around the world. So currently we've got 20 sort of WSO level 4-5 referees around the world, and there's still another 10, 15 refs that are looking to gain that sort of level. So they are being given opportunities to get to that level as well, to go from WSO level 2, 3 up to sort of level 4. And I think the goal is then to have this select band of referees that are going to referee these events at the highest level. So by the very nature of the different events and the number of, especially PSA events now, on this world tour, there's many more events now than there were sort of 10 years ago. So we going across the world refereeing these events to try to upskill and develop other referees from a local level. And all these referees are part, they've got a day job, Shaun. So their knowledge and understanding, their training and education, this is where we are today, to upskill these individuals. And also then trying to get new refs into the sport, be it players, be it ex-players. There's initiative around that, of which Jason is sort of looking after. And we've got the female sort of equality agenda as well, to look to get more female referees within the system as well. And that's a sort of project that Andrea is leading on. And then working with, in collaboration, all these sort of member nations, these federations, to upskill both referees and appraisers, within Wales, within England, within Europe, within Asia, within Pan Am and US and all these countries. Try to get these referees on board and basically on the same page, taking the same qualification to try ultimately to get the same sort of consistency.
Yeah.
And that's the work in progress.
Do you think that's made such a big difference? I remember, back before the WSO sort of took over all the refereeing, it was a case of like the Squash Wales level 1 was you did a course and we had a little test, and then level 2 was somebody who was a higher referee would assess, rather than now it's the online courses and the quiz. Have you seen the difference when you go to the lower level tournaments in better quality?
Yeah, but it is work in progress, Shaun, and to get the people. So where we are today, we've got, and to referee squash in 2025, we've got the technical aspects, the lets, the strokes, and the no lets. And then we've got the management side of it. So we've got the decision and we've got the explanation, really. So we've got the management, communication, and everything to, why is that a let? So we've got that knowledge to underpin as well. We've got to get the decision right. And we've got to say, the words, get that right, so that the players, the coaches, everyone watching, that's the reason why that decision is a let, a stroke, and no let. So it's a two-pronged attack now. It's not only the decisions, it's the explanations. So that's a sort of work, the training and education that is going on in the background. And it's early days.
Yeah, it's been 2 years.
Yeah, it's early days, and this is a challenge. And don't underestimate, it's a challenge, and everyone's got an opinion, haven't they? The armchair refs, they've got an opinion. And so we've got the administrators filtering down to us to say, we want the game to be refereed in this way. We need you to, to referee this way. We need the players to play, and it's the responsibility. Right? We need the coaches to coach. This is the way, because we need to play, to be exciting, dynamic, but we need the public to be able to watch it in the first place, especially when it's on the world stage, right? And this is the work in progress where we are now. It's tough, and we are doing that now. Workshops, refinar, directives, training, at the local level, at the national level, at the world level. So this is what WSO, their brand, the brand that we got via quizzes, trying to get it out a little bit more of a focal point on social media to try and educate, all these squash sort of enthusiasts. That's the work in progress today.
Yeah, but you see loads of people you see people doing like this. So you think you can ref, or this decision happened in my game, what would you give? And everybody's given some. You can tell the armchair ones, because the armchairs just putting like no let, stroke, and then you can see the ones that are more understanding of the rules, because they'll say no let, player gave you access to all of the front wall, you could have played this shot, this shot, this shot, or this shot, or stroke because of this, that, or and they're giving the explanation. When the ones who are giving the explanations, I'd say 9 out of 10 of them are giving the same decision and the same explanation pretty much. But it's getting that across.
It is. And then hopefully then the player will understand what they must do, if it's more effort to get to the ball, more effort to clear. So that will enable a game where there's too many stoppages to actually flow a little bit better, and people may be nervous starting off in game one, and they may find they lengthen and start hitting their targets, because ultimately why does the ref get involved in the first place? It is because the players missed their target. It is because the player's not moving properly, having a bad day at the office, so to speak, right? And there's interference. So there's something happening on the court which is causing the ref to get involved. And then the referee's decisions and understanding, their knowledge is very subjective. So that, that just adds a bit more tension and puts more information into the pot, which, may cause a little bit of confusion as well, isn't it?
Yeah, because you see the old one I always see, and correct me if I'm wrong, is when people say it hit the back wall, it can't be a stroke.
Yeah.
And I get that we had one in a match recently where somebody drilled it down the middle, like absolutely, it was just about in on the back wall, bounced, and they were stood on the tee, and the second bounce was like in between their legs.
Yeah.
And the person obviously asked, and I gave a stroke, and the bloke went, "Oh, come off the back wall, it's going to be a let."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, what shot's he going to play?"
Yeah.
I said, "You've skied it over his edge, you've stayed in the middle. I mean, was that the right decision, or is the back wall not?
That's right, yeah. And people think you don't give a stroke off the back wall. Where did that come from? That is not correct. And the other one linked to that, isn't it? My coach told me I've got to get back to the tee. I've got to get back to the tee. Yeah, well, if you hit the ball in the middle, you can't go back. You can't go back to the tee. Nobody said I got to go back to the tee. And so there's all these sort of old wives' tales, I think they are, that people are brought up, that and which are totally sort of incorrect, and we got to try and, in all these sort of difficult circumstances, this is our problem. We make it difficult for ourselves, and we're trying to simplify it by basically saying, look, there's two players in the ball, so once you've hit the ball, you've got to get out of the way, and you've got to try and make every effort to look for a go to play the ball. And then there's the ball. Is it loose? Is it in the middle of the court? Is it at the front of the court? Is it at the back of the court? And if you get a rationale for each of those, there's three sort of variables there, then normally it's 3-0 or 2-1, which will actually give you the explanation as well. You hit the loose ball, you got to get out of the way. That's why it's a stroke, because you're still in the way, you've hit a loose ball. And that will form your explanation as well. That's a simple sort of analogy, but that's where the game that we, the referees, sometimes the administrators, and even the players, we make it difficult for ourselves, because just keep it simple, and that will give us a fair outcome most of the time, the majority of the time, and it's interesting.
You've alluded to the Olympics a couple of times. Obviously, for squash, that's ever since I've been playing, they've been trying to get in.
Yeah.
So we didn't get in London, because you just think at the time for Britain with I think Nick Matthew was number 1, Will Strott was number 2, or vice versa. And we had Laura Massaro, that was a year before she won the first of her 2 worlds. Like, so gutted we didn't get that. But obviously we're in 2028 now. Obviously people like Mark Walters been a big part of that, and obviously Alex Goff is obviously putting the work over many years. What's the big goal for the WSO to get in place before the Olympics?
Yeah, so at the moment, obviously 2028, I don't think the referee sort of numbers has been confirmed yet, but potentially there could be 4-6 sort of referees. And basically it's just about sort of allocating those referees for that event, and hopefully there'll be a mixture of male and female sort of referees there. That's going to be a challenge in itself. How many referees? There's a rumor going around, there's 6 referees. But that'll be the goal of every sort of referee to get to and referee sort of at the Olympics. And hopefully then, our position can be confirmed, in the next couple of years before LA, that we go to Brisbane as well, because it'll be a real shame. But that's the sort of WSO pattern, we try to develop and get referees up to that standard, working closely then with sort of, like I've said, the admin, the players, so that we ensure, the transmission of those matches and the interaction between the referee and the players is an at the appropriate level of entertainment, as opposed to the dissent side of it, because it'll be a massive challenge for the players. It'll be a massive sort of challenge for the admin and for the referees as well. But everyone is working towards there, and all the officials, they hope, every one of us sort of gets selected, where appropriate for those sort of games.
Is there anything the WSO is working on? Like, obviously you mentioned like the pickups and the line calls and that. Is there any technology getting developed to make that any easier for you guys for the Olympics?
Well, hopefully, there's moves afoot. We've been to a couple of events over the last sort of year where behind the scenes there's some AI which is being sort of worked on to help sort of the video referee. But it's that sort of communication. The lines are always a massive sort of topic. I was in China last week, and there's a Korean firm which are openly, actively looking at, again, the lines, putting some form of sensors on the lines, and they have been tried, 4, 5, 6 times over the last 25 years since I've been involved, to try to get, the tin and the outlines, to help the referee. Whether that will come into place for 2028, we hope so, but at the moment, it's all sort of work in progress.
Would not something simple like there's a squash court by us where on the outlines they've got this, it's kind of weird to explain, but it's sort of like, do you remember the shark skin swimsuits that they had in the Beijing, but they put that like in reverse, so if the ball even touches it just shoots straight down. So you immediately know it's out because it's gone down.
Exactly, and things like this, you would think in 2025, the innovation, these sort of tech guys and these court builders would have sorted out, because we had the concave and the convex sort of lines on the tins as well, don't we, but on a glass court, obviously a little bit more sort of challenging. But you would hope, somebody somewhere comes up with a product that we can take forward. And like I said, we've got, was it 2.5 years probably, and that's one of the disappointing things, because even today, from a refereeing point of view, you mentioned the Z court, with the pink lines and the dark court. Even today, we have courts where there's white lines, and we've got a white ball. There's yellow lines. We got a white ball. People need to be in our corner as well, and speak to us actually, when we're sitting in the seat, what sort of colors, and we think, it's quite basic for me, you get a white ball, so you want to contrast white on something, don't you? That's not a light blue, that's not a yellow, is it? It needs to be a darker color, but they don't make things easier for themselves, do they? But hopefully that is work in progress as well. And it was interesting with this Korean company. They're looking at floors. They've got this pimple sort of floor, this glass pimple floor, which they're working on. So there's people out there around the world. They just need to be endorsed by the appropriate bodies, don't they?
Well, exactly. Yeah.
Interesting.
Before we go, is there anything you'd like to sort of give us, like advice or tips, or like everybody in my club, I tell them all to do the WSO level 0 because it's free and it's some basic form of knowledge. We try and get as many of them to do the level 1, because was it like 15 quid, something like that, to do the level 1? Not exactly, or $15 actually, I think it is.
$15, about £12,
So it's not much, and like in our club, you still get the bonus points as we mentioned, but we've got like 7 or 8 referees, like qualified referees, and it's, we'll have people who will just come down to referee to help out. But other than the WSO level 0, is there any other tips or advice you'd have for people to boost their knowledge?
Yeah, the big tip, obviously, go on the WSO website, but but if they play in and they've got a referee, I just think the two main sort of agendas, the two main words for me is what's fair, there's a situation on court and you just have a think, what's fair? Should I give the point to one player? Should I give a point to the other player? Or should, both of you at fault and let's play a let? I think what's fair, that's a good sort of first question to ask yourself, and fair could be giving a point to you. Fair could be denying a point to you, it could be a stroke or a no let. And then 100%, for all standard, but especially the guys in the third and the fourth team just starting out, is the safety side of it. And isn't it? Don't go hitting the ball because, the ball, unfortunately, is the size where it could do a lot of damage, especially around the facial area. You get hit by a racket, you get hit by a ball, and, so what's fair and safety? Stop, if in doubt. And like the referee then can, you could just play the point again. Let's play a let for me.
Yeah. Would you advise referees, if I was refereeing two people who only just started playing, if I could see player A is about to hit the ball, but the chances are he's either going to obliterate his opponent or just miss him, would you advise the referee to just stop?
Yeah, stop, and guys, in that situation, we need to stop and we just play the point again. Definitely safety, we don't want to get people hitting the ball, and that happens, obviously for the under 11s and the kids, but for adults playing, there's a couple of Zorros on court, isn't it? And it's
yeah.
And it's like the flashing blade, and not all of us are technically gifted, and when players want to take a swing, it's surprising how wide that swing is, and we just want to say, guys, we need to stop there. That's not fair. And if people are ducking and diving, goggles, some people wear some goggles as well, to be honest, if you feel a little bit frightened. But the safety aspect is massive. And then when we do get a little bit more competitive and we start knowing where to hit the ball or whatever and standing in the way, just say, look, you've got to move out of the way to give me a chance to go and hit it. So that's what this thing that I always say about two players and the ball. So we got the fair, the safety, and then we got, when we get a little bit competitive is, Roy, you got to move a little bit, mate. Or you got to try and look for the ball, mate, not running into your opponent. And that's where a little bit of coaching comes in there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we're not all the Joel Makins of the world where we pick every ball up. Some of us are a little bit slower than that, so we may not get that ball, isn't it? And that's the great on a Friday night in a sunny Maesteg, where you get a no let and you say, well, you're not as quick as you used to be, and that's
you're buying me 2 pints tonight.
Yeah. Some of these some of the decisions, and I like to do like an off the record sort of an uncut version, please, I'll book a taxi for you and booking an Uber for you on that one, and you never get that in a million years. And, that's a shocking tin. I love to referee a couple of the pros when they blast the ball into the tin after a rally and going, that's an absolute shocker.
Yeah.
It'd be great to do.
Do you think that's a Welsh thing though, or a rugby thing? Because you get a lot with like Nigel Owens with the famous one with the line outwards and straight, and he's like, I'm straighter than that.
Yeah. That's a couple of, but you like to give some sort of little few quips to pay some of these players back, because we just got to play, as we say, another one, play a straight bat, and we got to,
Before we go, have you got a favourite player that? Because obviously you've refereed some characters. Have you got a favourite player that you can have a bit of banter with while he's or she is playing?
Not so much where they playing, but because you got to respect these guys, these athletes. They fit as fiddles, But I've had a couple of run-ins with some players who were not on my Christmas card list, and there's a couple of players, that I would not like to meet down a dark alley as well, but lots of them showing the respect or whatever, and and you just try to be fair, but we get decisions wrong. It's exactly the same. They hit the ball out, they had unforced errors. I'd be a fool, if I think I get every decision right, or it's so tough, so subjective to referee the sport.
Yeah. Oh no. Yes. Well, most certainly is. Well, thank you very much for your time, Roy.
Yeah.
Um,
Good to see you,
and
mate. Good to see
good
you.
to see you too. We will catch up very soon, probably once the new year runs around, because you've got so much to do. I know I'm going to the British Junior Open as well in a couple of weeks, so it'll
I'll be
be.
there, mate. We'll catch up on a
Oh,
beer there.
I'll see you there then. I'll
Yeah.
see you there.
We'll catch up there, the BJO, mate. I'll be there.
No worries. You take care, right?
Thanks, mate. Keep safe.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
And that brings us to an end of this episode of Serving Up. A massive thank you to Roy for his time, his honesty, and for pulling back the curtain on what it really takes to be a referee at the very top of the game, from Maesteg on Boxing Day to the World Championships, and now on the Olympic journey with the WSO. If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow, subscribe, and leave a rating or review. Generally helps us find more racket sports fans, players, and it'll help future referees as well maybe find this show. If you're a club player or a parent, please share this episode with referees and captains in your league. Might just change how they see the job. You can catch up on previous episodes as well, and stay tuned for future guests that are coming up almost every week now. Next week we'll be speaking to Olympian Marcus Ellis on his journey from getting into badminton all the way through to getting that bronze medal at Rio 2016, and then afterwards and his journey with badminton skills as well. This episode has been brought to you by Oliver Squash UK. And remember, if you're an England Squash member, you can enter your membership portal and use your unique code to get 20% off all Oliver products, whether it's squash, pickleball, paddle, badminton, new bag, whatever it is, you can get your discounts on it. And also ACC Leisure, who are there to help secure the future of leisure in the UK. They're there for all your flooring needs, so please head to their website and connect to them if there's anything you need. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week when, as I said, we speak to Olympic bronze medalist Marcus Ellis. Until then, take care.